Welcome to the chat. And in our last video for our America's 250th birthday, we really cannot talk about the birth of a nation without bringing up our main man, Paul Revere. Now, in all fairness to Paul Revere, his whole history could take like multiple videos, and none of us got time for that. So if you end up wanting to know more about him, you can always ask. I'll go into it a little bit more. But let's get to it. First off, our man Paul Revere, he is the son of a French immigrant, and a Boston native, okay? He was raised as an artisan, became a silversmith at age 19 because his dad passed away, had to take care of his family and his mom. And then eventually he thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to have a stable job if I join the military, and quit like a few months later. He went back. Then he ended up getting married, had 8 kids with his first wife. She passed away, and then he got remarried shortly after and had another 8 kids. Like, homeboy got a basketball team, he's got a baseball team. Baseball's America's favorite pastime. Maybe. I don't know. Some people might argue football. But he's got teams. Pretty much. Right there. Anyway, he's living around this time of all the taxation that's going on in Boston, right? Or at least that's going on in the colonies. So he's kind of doing pretty well, He's a master goldsmith, he's an engraver, and he's a dentist. So he went from really poor beginnings to being able to be pretty well off considering the time. And he starts noticing all of these things that are going on with his neighbors, and he's like, man, all of this taxation stuff is eventually coming for me, and that's not okay. So actually, he became a Freemason. Yes, the super secret society that people tell you you're not supposed to know about, but we all know about, and that's in all of our currency and stuff. Yeah, Freemasonry is in a lot of stuff. We can totally get into that in another video. Drop it in the comments if you want to know. Anyway, so he becomes a Freemason. He makes connections. He's then becoming part of a secret society outside of that, where it is a secret political party called the Sons of Liberty, right? And that's where he meets John Hancock and he meets Samuel Adams. Yes, the one that the beer is named after. Which again, today I was humbled to know that that beer is really recent, and I would have thought it was like an older one. But hey, open to learning new things all the time. Anyways, so 1765, he's now entered this Sons of Liberty, which is a political party, secret political party that is going against the British government and the British soldiers that are there. So he actually becomes a spy, and his job is to report on all the movement of British soldiers. So in 1773, there's a very important thing that happens where he and some others disguise themselves as Native Americans, and they throw the tea into the Boston Harbor. Yes, we are literally a country who went to war over paying taxes on tea and stamps and some other stuff. But taxes. If you know, you know. Anyway, so we do that. April 18th, 1775. We have now pissed off Britain, and they are sitting there and forcing, us to quarter their soldiers. There's, a whole other huge thing that happens, which again, we can go into another video if you want, but it leads to people in Boston being killed by the soldiers in the streets and stuff like that. It ends up being a riot. So we're at the point where we're at April 18th, 1775, okay? And Dr. Joseph Warren, who is also a Freemason, he summons Paul Revere and tells him that he has found out that the British are coming to arrest John Hancock and Samuel Adams, who are the leaders of the Sons of Liberty. And at the same time, he's also supposed to be watching to see if the British are going to be traveling by land to Concord, Massachusetts, which is where they had all these hidden ammunitions and kind of like their little armory, right? But it was super secret and they didn't want anybody to know it was there because they were stockpiling this stuff in order to go ahead and fight against the British soldiers. So Warren goes ahead and summons him and says, hey, they're going to arrest them. I need you to go out to Lexington. So he's like, okay, well, here's where the famous ride comes in. Okay, he notices, because he's the spy, trying to track British movements. He goes and he tells who we don't know still, an unidentified man that happens to be a friend of his, to go up to the bell tower at the Christ Church and put a second lantern to alert everyone that the British are coming by sea. So he gets on his horse and he starts galloping over, and he actually crosses the Charles River. He sneaks by the British Royal Navy and makes it to the other side of the Charles River, where a friend of his, who was also a patriot, John Larkin, gives him a horse when he arrives in Charlestown. And that's when he starts making his ride to Lexington and Concord, because he's got to go and check the stores in Concord, but he's also got to try and protect Sam Adams and John Hancock from getting arrested. And they're in Lexington, which, if John Hancock sounds familiar to you, he is one of the biggest signatures on the Constitution. And the Declaration of Independence. Whew, got that mixed up. My bad. Declaration of Independence, guys. Even we all make mistakes, tunes included. I digress. But that's also where you hear the expression, like, I just need John Hancock on this. They're asking for your signature. He was a real dude. So he goes, he's riding, and he almost gets caught. So he actually has to divert himself and go through Medford, Massachusetts, where he actually meets up with a Minuteman captain and tells them the British are coming, which is where we hear the British are coming, the British are coming. It's a very famous line. So he goes, and then he warns everyone in Medford, and he finally makes it around 11 to Lexington, where he goes and he tells, he starts yelling, the British are coming. And now there's a sergeant standing guard at this tavern, and he's like, yo, like, obviously in like the most old English way possible, but roughly translated, like, yo, shut up. You're going to warn them that you're going to bring them all here. And he's like, what do you mean? Shut up. They're already coming. And John Hancock is like, hey, I know that guy. Let him in. And we go ahead and we find out he tells them about it, that the British are coming. Now, later on, we come to find out that this news that they were going to get arrested was actually false. But everyone assumes that Paul Revere was the only writer. There was actually another writer that came by, William Davies. He arrived a half hour later. They kind of rested, and then they both rode out to Concord to check on their stores. And then a doctor, Samuel Prescott, met with them too. They checked it, everything was good, and then on their way back, they actually get captured by British soldiers. And Paul Revere is the only one who actually really gets captured. The other two, like, they book it, pieced out, never got captured. But he does, and he ends up having to give up his horse. They try to interrogate him. He's like, zilch, nada, I know nothing. And then he leaves. Now, he heads back to where Sam Adams and John Hancock were, because they started leaving, and now he knows that these British soldiers are coming. So he's like, I gotta take all this really important, sensitive information and dip. He takes it, and as he's leaving, carrying it over his shoulder, he starts hearing gunshots. And that is where we officially end up in our American Revolutionary War. If you like that really short summary, because it's short in comparison to everything else that you could have had, go ahead and hit that plus sign and drop a comment as to what you want to hear next. Until next time.